Hi, welcome and good evening. I'm Randall Miller, Director of Dance Programming and Special Projects for the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and co-director of the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival. On behalf of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and the Humanities Center of Carnegie Mellon University, I'm here to welcome you tonight. I'd now like to invite my co-director, David Shumway from the Humanities Center of Carnegie Mellon, to say a few words. David?
Hello and welcome. Since 2015, the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival has been bringing smart talk about stuff that matters to the people of Pittsburgh. We're pleased to be able to do that again today and every Wednesday this month. Randall?
Thanks, David. I'd now like to turn over to a message from our presenting sponsor with Dan Fitzpatrick.
Hello, I'm Dan Fitzpatrick, President of Citizens Bank for the Mid-Atlantic region. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival. As you know, 2020 was a very challenging year, and the challenges of 2020 still persist today. This is why we at Citizens are happy to support the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival, because it provides for meaningful dialogue and connection right when we need it most. It's extremely important to support programs that create positive connections and impacts on our communities. And although we cannot gather in person for the program, we're proud to share in this virtual tradition with you. We hope that these interviews with artists, academics, and intellectual innovators working to make Pittsburgh and our world a better place will not only lead you to think and reflect on the issues facing our communities, but to take meaningful action to help bring about change. So thank you again to the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust for hosting the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival. We're grateful and we look forward to joining the discussions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to Citizens Bank for their support. You know, financial support is a critical piece of our ability to produce programs like the Humanities Festival at Home. If any of our viewers out there would wish to make a financial contribution to help support programs like this, please visit trustarts.org/supporthumanities. Before I go and pass it over to David for the introductions, I want to make you aware that we will be taking audience questions at the end of the talk. And so if you have them, please post them in the comments on either Facebook or YouTube. We'll take a select number of those and include them in the conversation. David, can you introduce our speakers for tonight?
Yes, it is my pleasure to invite you to join in conversation with Jasmine Cho. Jasmine is a Pittsburgh-based artist, author, and cookie activist, most known for using portrait cookies to elevate representation for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. She is also a Food Network champion and the founder of Yummyholic. She will be interviewed by Sarah Tang. Sarah is a multidisciplinary artist and illustrator who's affiliated with the #NotWhite Collective, the Pittsburgh Society of Illustrators, and is the founder of the creative collaborations community Sip and Sketch Pittsburgh.
Thank you so much. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Sarah.
I'm so happy and excited to be talking with you this evening. So just to introduce you again, after that, Jasmine's a really good friend of mine. We met at an art exhibition several years ago that highlighted Asian American artists, and that's where I saw Jasmine's work with Yummyholic. I was blown away. So once again, Jasmine's an artist, a social activist, founder of Yummyholic, author and illustrator, TEDx speaker, and Food Network champion. Her work's been featured nationally on CBS, the National Portrait Gallery, Oprah, Taste Magazine, as well as locally with TEDx. And I also want to talk about her book really quick, Role Models Who Look Like Me, which she wrote and illustrated with intricate watercolors of Asian American Pacific Islander role models. I wish I could have grown up with this book. It's just so heartwarming.
Me too.
And beautiful. Yeah. And if we could have show a few images of your cookie portraits really quick, I just want to highlight how amazing your work is. It blows me away and makes me hungry every time I see it. Not only do you use the paint and brush as tools for change, you use the rolling pin, flour, and sugar. It's so great. I'm ever inspired by your visionary approach to what something as simple as a cookie can be. So you started your company, Yummyholic, with a therapeutic approach to baking, and you've elevated baking to be a fun yet powerful tool for representation. And cookies connect everyone. You have used cookies to raise awareness for a whole range of issues, from representing Asian American and Pacific Islander role models to learning about the census. I myself have learned about so many Asian American icons through your cookie portraits. So I wanted to ask, what do you most enjoy about using cookies as social activism? And what is challenging about it too?
Yeah, I think you mentioned what I most enjoy, that cookies are like that universal connector of everybody. I love to say that cookies are, to me, the most disarming medium possible. And I think that's where the power in this medium lies. It's just fun, it's disarming, it's inviting, it really kindles this sense of childhood and innocence in everybody. And I think, yeah, I think that disarming part is what is so powerful and unique about it, because you look at this cookie and it just draws you in and you start asking questions that I want you to ask, like, oh, whose face am I looking at? What's the story behind this? As far as what's more challenging, I guess I could say that it's a very slow medium, like it's a very slow art in creating each of these pieces. So sometimes I might have inspiration strike me and I want to respond immediately, but each cookie piece takes me several hours spread out across a couple days. So I have to be patient. But yeah, other than that, I think not too challenging at all.
Good. Yeah, that I'm just amazed as a watercolorist myself. I look at your portraits and I'm just like, wow, you did that with icing. That is incredible. um, and what I also find empowering about your work is how you manage to spread joy, but you also don't shy away from tough conversations and addressing social justice issues. I think in our social media age, the bright icing and beauty of your cookie portraits grab people's attention, like you were saying, it's disarming in a good way.
Mhm.
And then you draw people into a deeper story, to the person behind the cookie and the name.
Mhm.
So I was wondering what you've kind of discovered about humanity and about yourself along with that through baking and activism over the years.
Yeah, through baking. I would say that's a big question. About humanity, I think what was really demonstrated, especially in this past year through the pandemic, is that baking can be very therapeutic. It's something that I personally experienced while running Yummyholic as a business. The kitchen and the actual act of baking is what really kept me going, because there were a lot of very long, difficult nights. If you're just trying to make a living through cookies, sometimes it can be difficult. But yeah, I think I mentioned that cookies itself is a very slow art, and I think baking as well generally is a very slow, methodical process. And I think there's a lot of healing that can be channeled in that, because you're taking time to breathe, to slow down, and baking offers this structure that I believe and method that I believe gives you this sense of control. Like you just follow a recipe and you have some sense of control, which can feel very healing and empowering, especially when the world around you is completely out of your control. So that's definitely what I've noticed about baking. And did you also say what is surprising or
Yeah, what's
yeah.
kind of surprised you on that journey? Because 'Cause I'm
Yeah.
sure you've had a few, like, aha moments, over the years that
Ye
have kind of
yeah.
surprised you.
So the therapeutic aspect, I think, was very intuitive, and I feel that that's collectively intuitive as far as people understanding. It's a very healing, empowering process to bake your own bread or to bake treats. It's a love language, really. But I would say one of the more surprising things I felt in this journey over the last few years, especially right after my TEDx talk, is that I had this intention of speaking directly to, well, I always say that all my work is really motivated by 10-year-old Jasmine. So I'm like envisioning these, young Asian American girls and children out there and the role models that I needed at that time. But after my TEDx talk and over the years, continuously, I've been hearing from people all around the world that don't necessarily personally identify as Asian or American, but the message of feeling underrepresented or misrepresented, or sometimes outright just intentionally excluded from history books, really seems to resonate in a very universal way too. And so, yeah, I've heard from people from Pakistan and along with China, and it's just been really, I think, like it blew my mind more. Like I knew, I'm like, I think I'm onto something here with the way I was able to tap into the power of cookies as an educational and like activism platform. But I'm still like surprised at all the diversity of voices that connect
Wow.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What a testament to our global humanity.
Yes. Yeah.
Word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I also wanted to ask, what's keeping you grounded and inspired right now? We've been through so many things in this last year since 2020 and the pandemic, but also in 2021 so far. It's been a challenging year so far.
Yes. Yeah, challenging on the macro level, but also personally too. It's been very difficult for me with family loss and all of that. But I would say, especially recently, what's been keeping me grounded, or what generally keeps me grounded, is definitely routine and ritual. Making sure that I
Mm,
honor space for routine and ritual. The way that my routine and ritual looks is typically regularly journaling or sweating. I think like I need to sweat like through physical activity. I have for the most of last year remained quite sedentary, but I really recognize the power of sweating out like and just getting all the good endorphins going in your body, and just honoring your physical health as well as your mental health in that kind of way. Even just I check in regularly with an art therapist every week just for maintenance. I might not have something specific going on, but it really helps to have a space where I could just unload that isn't so concentrated just on my partner or my friends, or so I would say, yeah, that is what's helping to keep me grounded. As far as keeping me inspired, I would say I especially have natural tendencies to turn inward and be like this introverted hermit. But I think what's really powerful is to remain connected to friends, to family, to the world, especially with how heavy it's been. I totally understand when you need to unplug, but if you're somebody kind of like me that doesn't know how to plug back in and can like really just end up totally unplugging, like that's not healthy either. So I think what keeps me inspired is remaining connected to folks, and it's like the folks themselves who are inspiring me. Like Mr. Rogers loves to say, look for the helpers when there are heavy times. And yeah, it's important to connect to the helpers too, for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you are certainly a helper.
Thank
I
you.
think I read this on one of your Instagram posts, or perhaps your website, where you were saying that you love feeding people's stomachs and hearts.
Mhm.
And I just love that because it's so true, like nourishment all around. And
Yes.
I was wondering if you could share any words of wisdom from your heart, from your process, to folks who might be watching, who are seeking some of your wisdom on that and feeding stomachs and hearts.
Yeah. Again, I mentioned health is not just physical, and it's not just emotional, mental. I mean, there's just so many aspects, spiritual. I think recognizing that health has all these different layers is a really important step as far as feeding yourself, like physically nourishing yourself, but also feeding others and nourishing others from a heart space. I think Hmm, like, I don't know if I can offer any new wisdom, but I think one of my messages always is to never underestimate the small. Like, you think that something is
Mm.
small, so you either don't do it or you like for better or for worse, like the small things you say and the small things you do for better or for worse always can make an impact. And sometimes it's cumulative, like especially as Asian American women, imagine all the microaggressions we listen to and we receive like all throughout our life, like that lands on us over and over again, and that makes a huge impact. But also that when you do this small act with great love, like it could just take one phone call. Or yeah, when I was really struggling over the last couple weeks recently, I think I put out an SOS really actually on Facebook, and I, confessed I really needed support. And just like the one text message coming from each and every one of you, Sarah too, were checking in on me, and just friends really helped me feel so supported and meant a lot. So I think when it comes to nourishing stomachs and hearts, just recognize that all the small things really matter. Yeah, for better or for worse, that you do and put out into the world.
Absolutely. I'm gonna savor that with my cup of tea tonight.
Nice.
Think about that. Small acts with great love. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. To-do list to make cookies too, so I'm gonna think about that.
What's that? Sorry, I didn't hear
It's on
you.
my to-do list to make some cookies too, so I'm gonna think about that as I do that.
Oh,
Be
great.
like, "Oh, yeah,
With your tea
beautiful."
to enjoy.
Um, are there any exciting new cookie portraits that you're working on that you'd like to tell us about?
Um, you know what? Because it's been kind of really personally rocky in my life right now, I haven't really been able to reconnect with my medium as much as I would have liked. I'm also in the middle of a master's program studying art therapy. So that, yeah, the program is quite intensive. Yeah, but I need to like reconnect with the baking part. Like I'm preaching all the therapeutic impacts of it, but I actually haven't been practicing as much lately, and that might be contributing to me feeling a little more stressed than usual. So I think I do need to reconnect with the kitchen. There's just so many stories and things going on right now that I don't even know which to start with. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's nothing immediately planned right now. I actually have more traditional art projects in the works for my therapy program, but um,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I also wanna share with viewers really quickly as well that, I love all of your cookie portraits, and all your work. All of it's really incredible, but my personal favorite's probably Keanu Reeves, featured, from the, Always Be My Maybe on Netflix, and, he plays himself in the film, and you did such a great little cookie animation of it, which was, like, really impressive because you had to do
Thank
it with
you.
one cookie. It was like stop motion, but with cookies,
Yeah.
like, wow. So,
Yes, yeah. That is something that I'd like to revisit as well, doing more stop motion animations with cookies.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. I know like the ones that I've been doing recently are shorter. Like the Keanu Reeves one is of him getting punched in the face, which is a reference to that movie, Always Be My
Yeah.
Maybe. But the one I did of Christine Sun Kim, whose portrait was shared just a little bit ago,
Mm.
that whole animation was of her, a snippet of her doing America the Beautiful in American Sign Language, and that was about
Wow.
45 different cookies that I did. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, and I'd love to make like a short film all with the stop motion animation cookies. That's definitely a big goal of mine. But yeah, Keanu Reeves is one of my favorite cookies too. That cookie in particular actually has special significance because it came about during 2019, which was a wild, very nonstop busy year for me. And my brother asked me, what are you doing for fun these days? And I said, oh my gosh, I don't know how to answer that because I was running nonstop. And I was like, you know what? I've been really wanting to check this movie out. So I watched it. And that cookie, the Keanu cookie, reminds me of like how important it is to play and to reconnect
Yes.
with joy as you're working too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Representation matters, even with
Mhm.
cookies
Yeah.
and merch is a small thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. Um, yeah, so if I can go back in time, I'm thinking about the first time I met you, and you had all these little cupcakes lined up, and it was the year of the pig, Lunar New Year.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I believe that was the first Asian American art exhibition in Pittsburgh, that was all um, Asian American artists. So it was just really cool to be surrounded by all of you and to also meet you because I didn't grow up with other Asian Americans around me, you know?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that was just like really a powerful place to meet, and the dragon dance and
Yes.
combination of food and celebration and all these kind of breaking barriers. And I also want to say for viewers, they'll be able to see your cookie portraits at Space Gallery
Oh,
pretty
that's
soon in
right.
June.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see your cookie portraits in person as well.
Yeah,
So that's going to be really exciting to kind of witness that and to see those at Space. So yeah,
yeah,
come on.
yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Hey guys, I'm just coming in to let you know that there's 5 minutes left in the talk, and for the viewers at home, get your questions ready and please post them on either Facebook or YouTube. All right, see you guys in 5 minutes.
Alrighty.
Great.
Yeah, actually, I never remember where I first met friends, so I'm so glad you remember that, and, that was an amazing experience because especially, we made it very intentional to be in Homewood at, what's the name of that?
Everyday
Yes,
cafe.
yes, at
Yeah.
Everyday Cafe, and it was so amazing, and, um, actually, I had organized an Asian American artist gallery exhibit, like real it was much smaller, but it was a whole other Lunar New Year party that
Ah,
happened back in the day. I wish I remembered what year this was, but this was, like, way back,
oh, wow.
in Lawrenceville at 720 Cafe Records. It's no longer there, which
Yeah.
I'm
Oh my goodness.
heartbroken over, but yeah, that space was really cool because there was a loft upstairs and, another good friend of mine, Paul Dang, he opened up that space and, it was a lot more casual, but it was an amazing time then too, so
Yeah. Looking forward to any questions if there are any. I also
yeah.
want to talk about how cool it was to see you speak. I think it was, I forget the name of the event. It was at the Squirrel Hill Library, actually. You and Ethan and other friends were speaking.
Uh-huh.
And I think someone had talked about the importance of seeing Asian Americans
Mhm.
in different ways in society, not just the stereotypes, and I was just like, "Wow." Yeah, like, it is we don't necessarily think of artists, art therapists, social
Yeah,
activists when we think of Asian Americans,
right.
so, as a fellow artist, it's just, like, so cool to be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm rooting for everything about who you are and what you're doing, it's so
Oh,
cool."
thank you. Yeah, I think the heart of why we say representation matters is because we need and want and desire to be seen, and to be shown possibilities, I think is so important, especially when we're younger. Like, and that just sticks with us all our lives and into adulthood. Like you mentioned my book, and I dedicated it not just to kids. It is a children's book or intended to be, but I dedicated it also to kids at heart because, yeah, it makes an impact on like our age people, folks too. So,
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, thank you.
All right, I'm back with some more questions.
okay.
All right, so the first one is you call yourself a cookie activist. Are you the only one, or is there a community of cookie activists out there? And who else should we look at?
Yes, I don't know, anyone else who specifically identifies themselves as a cookie activist, but there's definitely a huge they're called cookiers, is I like on Instagram, there's a whole cookier, community, and many of them have started to also, use their cookies for social messages. And I believe even locally, there's a movement started. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it, but, Baking for Change, I believe, is the local Pittsburgh movement that recently started. I don't remember who the founders are, but they are all, local bakers, and, they are featuring not just cookies, but cakes with messages and all kinds of baked goods that might, like, have the icing on it saying "Stop Asian Hate," or anything like that. So, yeah, I think there's a ton of folks who are wonderfully bringing in an aspect of activism in whatever their medium is. Yeah.
That's really cool. I'll have to look that up myself.
Yeah.
Baking for change.
Yes.
Then the next question I have for you is, can you talk a bit about your process? In addition to just making the cookies, what is your design phase? How many drafts do you go through before you reach a finished cookie? Are you making cookie cutters for each? Or are you hand cutting them, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So sometimes I'll work directly off of a photograph, and it's just simply now what I do. I used to freehand everything, but from the quantity of cookies I was starting to do, I now use the aid of a mini projector to project onto like my blank cookie canvas. But even if I am using the projector, I sometimes will do a draft by hand, and I like to basically do line drawings of the faces that I'm doing so that all the details of the face are just easy, like more easy to see, I guess, and easy for me to then outline in icing. And I mentioned it takes a couple hours spread out over a couple days for me because each layer that I'm putting down requires enough dry time. At least I like to make sure everything is completely dry before I go back on top of it with different icing or with paint or anything like that, so I don't mess with the texture of the cookie. So that's pretty much my process. As far as cutting the cookies, I hand cut every cookie with like a mini X-Acto knife. If I'm doing a large quantity, then I we have a 3D printer at home, and I make custom cookie cutters out of the 3D printing to help me with that too. Yeah, so
Great. Thanks for sharing that process. Do you have any YouTube tutorials or whatever, or on Instagram, do you show anybody like the process?
Yeah, most recently, in collaborating with Kidsburg, in Pittsburgh, we did a Women's History Month video that is up on my channel as well as their YouTube channel. But yeah, it's a whole video that anyone can access, and it shows you ways where you could create your own portrait cookies. So something that I don't do, but I teach in that video, is you can also use a piece of tissue paper, line that up on top of your drawing, like on paper, trace that with like an edible ink marker, and then retrace that on top of your cookie or your icing, and it'll leave a nice like edible ink mark on it without use of a projector. Because I know projectors can get pricey. So that's like the sort of MacGyver way. And you can check that video out, Women's History Month, Kidsburg, and learn how to make your own portrait cookies.
Awesome. Next question is, you talk a lot about representation and the importance of seeing people who look like you. Who were some of your biggest inspirations, as you were either in cookies or in life?
Yeah, in baking specifically, the first person whose story really lit me up is Joanne Chang. She's the founder of Flour Bakery, their whole bakery cafe chain out in the Boston area. She, I believe, is Taiwanese American, and I got to meet her. I think. I don't remember now. Like the years are blurring. I think it was 2019, but I got to hand deliver a portrait of her to her, and that was super cool because her story too was she was, I think, studying finance and economics or something at Harvard, but her passion was just in sharing chocolate chip cookies around her dorm mates, and she dropped everything and went into baking and just started reaching out to different bakeries and see if anyone would employ her so she could get some real life experience. And I basically did the same thing by creating YouTube videos as my sort of unofficial resume because I didn't have any culinary education or any even like back of house restaurant experience. So those YouTube videos are what I sent out to local bakeries here in Pittsburgh, and that's how I got my first foot in the door in a baking job, which confirmed that yes, I think I have grit for baking more than sitting in a cubicle or doing any other job. So yeah, so Joanne Chang. That's just one person. Should I name a couple more people or?
A couple more quick, yeah, would be great.
Yeah. Shoot, inspirations. There's so many. I guess everyone. I choose cookie portraits of people who inspire me in general. It meant a lot to me when I first learned about Sammy Lee, who I also talk about in my TEDx talk. But he was the first Asian American and Korean American gold medalist in Olympic diving for the U.S. and his story is just, especially I guess because he is Korean American, really made an impression on me. Specifically, I also identify as Korean American, so knowing that someone had existed and paved the way, but also, I mean, his story is not all, it's not just about the gold medal. He ended up serving as like an ambassador for the country and trying to talk about this American freedom and dream, but he ultimately was redlined in his community out in California and was not allowed to buy a home in a certain area for being Asian. So, it's just like he was even a medical war hero, and it almost like, all that pain that comes from it. I wish I had learned about him also when I was growing up and younger, because just understanding that there were these hardships that were were separate from like witnessing my own parents' hardships. I don't know. I think it would have again felt like there was a community of ancestors existing before my family, in this country. Would have been important, yeah.
Yeah. So last question, and this one's a bit lighter. As we talk about how we know you, I've worked with you on several different events, and just curious, with all the things that are going on, are you still working on commercial cookie sales, for events and for people?
Not exactly, not exactly, but right now the bulk of what I'm doing right now are talks like these. I am doing speaking engagements and workshops, and within the workshops, typically people will order like decorating cookie kits for all the participants, or they will order some custom cookies to gift out to their collaborators or donors or whatever. So the reason why I'm doing that right now is it's just right now more sustainable for me. I kind of stepped away from the custom cookie aspect to the general public because my art was starting to feel just so labor intensive. It's like I rather focus on one piece rather than having to suddenly feel like I'm a machine and trying to crank out like copies and copies of different cookies. Although I do miss that, but right now I'm focusing more on the workshops and speaking. So.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Jasmine. That's all we have time for on this episode of the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival at Home. I'd like to invite David Shumway back on to say goodnight with all of us. So, yeah, I'm glad we had this conversation originally slated for the Humanities Festival in 2020 in live and in person, and we were not able to do it. So I'm glad that we were able to have some version of it happen, even if it is a year later online. But thank you, Jasmine, and thank you, Sarah, for tonight's conversation. I'm sure it will be inspiring to those who've watched. I see a lot of great comments online. And again, before we go, I have to, ask our viewers at home to please consider making a financial contribution to support the mission and future of programming like the Humanities Festival. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check out trustarts.org/humanities for videos from the rest of this month, and tune in next week for our final program of the 2021 Humanities Festival at Home. Thank you and good night.
Night.